things, ask countless questions, as I and every normal human being would do. The first question is, when will the police learn? There are so many bad examples. There are so many cases that didn't turn out right. So at what point will the force sanitize itself? We've had the Chinedu case, which is, it almost at this point defines the history of River State. It was that big. We've had a young man who joined me here in the studio to talk about some officers extorting him and forgetting their phone in his car. We have the case I talked about yesterday, a boat driver alleging that he was arrested illegally. We have Temple calling this morning saying that his brother has been behind bars for 1 month and they're asking for 5 million. And we have lots of other cases that you and I have not heard of and may never hear. We've had one of the biggest protests this country has seen in 2020, tagged NSARS. So at what point will the police say, you know what? I think it's time we stopped. I don't know. Because as of this morning, they've not gotten there. But let's take the update to the boat driver story. Lucky Onisokume, the driver who was wrongfully arrested and detained at the IGP monitoring unit, has named 2 officers, Azubike and Joshua, as member of the IGP monitoring team that arrested him. Mr. Onisokume named them while speaking on the radio program on Tuesday.
My IPO for the Akwa Ibom team, his name now Azubike.
Okay.
He's from Ejie. Then the second officer to follow, his name now Joshua. Now just these 2 of them name I know.
Meanwhile, some Nigerians have likened it to the case of Chinedu and called on the Commissioner of Police not to sweep the matter under the carpet.
This one not be bad arrest, I'll call this one. This one I kidnapping because that guy for just die for there. He just remain for their hand. Nobody go know where a part of that guy. Because so they do Shima own. They not cover this issue. Maybe they follow up this issue.
I don't know what they do for this country. I beg, I want them punish. Those people, make them sack them, punish them very well. So I don't know that's good.
Just as you don't say, don't arrest you say anything you say or do will be used against you. And then go see tell you to write statement. And that statement where they write, it go use against you. Anybody where they in charge, we know how to handle this case very well. So don't that go like that. The case don't close like that.
Now what's the style, the procedure, the method? Those who have lived this experience say officers are raising money before being granted bail. Now they turn their attention to soft targets, men and women, young boys and girls, in most cases on the basis of false assumption as to the identity of the person or no offense at all. And then forced to pay some money after being transferred from one infirmary or cell to another. So the idea is, well, money can and will solve your problem. And Nigerians are more often than not ready to and go through the stress of correcting this wrong. So why has this culture prevailed? Our guest this morning is Nkasi Wodu, who is a peace, security, and human rights practitioner, and he joins me via phone. Good morning, Mr. Wodu.
Good morning, Sam. Thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure. So, with all the warnings, with all the examples, with all the cases we've had, why do we still have instances of illegal arrests, police brutality, and human rights abuses from the police force?
Thank you very much, Sam. And before I go on, I really want to express my shock. I mean, I wish I could say I was shocked, really, with what happened with Mr. Lucky. I followed that and it was very, very disheartening. But it is just one blip in a series of disheartening stories that we hear consistently with operatives of the Nigerian police force. I mean, generally, Nigerian security agencies in general, but in this particular case, the Nigerian police force. To answer your question, I think that the way these things happen is simple. It's a lack of accountability. There's no accountability. People are not being held accountable for their actions. People do not see consequences for when they engage in gross violations of people's rights of this scale. And we're not just talking about accountability individually for police people, but accountability within the security system as a whole. There is very little consequence when people engage in this sort of actions. And frankly speaking, from what I have seen and what I have read and what have followed, this will continue as long as people do not know that they are going to be punished for this sort of actions. As long as citizens have to continue to protest and consistently break their backs so that a police commissioner or a police hierarchy will make a perfunctory measure to punish somebody, I mean, we will continue to see human rights violations of this nature.
All right. Many times it's made to look like us versus them. When something happens in power, the citizens claim that they are victims. Meanwhile, the power is with those in power. But we know that systems are run by people, and people come from communities. So this lack of accountability, is it reflected in the community as it is with authority? Is it the same thing, or is it a different set of rules for them than it is for us?
I think the lack of accountability resides with the security forces. There are sufficient rules within the police regulations and within the Nigerian Police Act, that prescribes punishments. Even in the Constitution, there is a of public officers. So there are sufficient rules and regulations and policies prescribes punishment for people of this nature. Nigeria recently passed an actual act in 2017. Up till today, no person has been prosecuted under that torture act that was passed. So it's a lack of accountability within the security system themselves, within the hierarchy of the police and the other security agencies.
What role does the pace of the judicial process play in all of this? Because I know that the Chima case, well, I'm not satisfied with how fast it's going, but at least it's going. So does that also affect willingness of people to pursue justice?
A lack of accountability, the difference of impunity, which we see how police officers and security agencies engage in acts of impunity. One of the things that enables it is the failing justice system. And I've talked about this on several occasions, and then we've written about it. Until we fix our justice system, until we fix our legal system, we will continue to have problems. I mean, when you have where fundamental human rights take months for them to actually be processed. I mean, and fundamental human rights violations are actually things that are supposed to be expedited because they are of extreme nature. They are things that concern, in most cases, life and death situations. When you have situations where courts take years to actually pursue through a matter, and then it only enables impunity because you know the courts, which is the arm of government or the institution that can actually make you accountable or that can make the police officer accountable, is slow, and it is really, really unfair in a lot of instances. So police officers have that impunity. They know they can do whatever they want. And they know as well that so because of the expense of the justice system, people are more than willing to say, oh, I will not pursue this matter. Oh, thank you, he's alive. I mean, I read the case of Lucky, and everybody kept saying, thank you, thank God he's alive. Thank God he's alive. We shouldn't thank God that he's alive. That's not what we should be doing. We should be on wait. We should have people be losing their jobs. We shouldn't be thanking God that somebody that was kidnapped by officers that are paid by Nigerian taxpayers' money, anyway, kidnapped and that he somehow survived, even after they denied the fact that he was actually in their custody. That shouldn't be the lesson here. The lesson shouldn't be about thanking God. It should be about how can we fix this system? How can we make people punishable? How can we make people account for their crimes under this system? That's what we should be looking at.
Well, Mr. Wodu, I completely understand your position, but I'm certain that the family members of that driver would beg to differ. They will share a different sentiment. Just seeing their relative alive would be a testimony. And I understand there's a place for accountability, but thank God he's alive. I mean, in a helpless situation, that's the first thing you want to do. Now, I understand that, the justice system and the way things are working is not exactly helping people come forward and try to correct this wrong. But you see, the justice system is also made up of people. Now, the police is dysfunctional. The justice system that has legal practitioners is also dysfunctional. So that tells you the problem might just be with people.
I disagree. I disagree with that, sir. I disagree with that. People, regardless of how inherently bad people are, if you put people in a system where they know that there is a greater price to pay for engaging in impunious acts, or there is a greater price to pay for crossing the line, people will seldom cross the line. It happens. I've seen that happen again and again and again. A lot of us decide to leave Nigeria to get to other parts of the world. It's not because people in those areas are inherently good. No, it's because there are systems that make them, that hold them accountable. Now, an argument, the counter argument would be, oh, that system is also run by people. Well, true, that's a counter argument. Yes, it is run by people. But then we cannot, but it is a system. And so regardless of who comes in and who goes in, because there is a system there, there is a standard or a measure with which people are expected to act within that particular system. And that's what is important in this particular situation. I think that, yes, people, there have been arguments. I mean, in some of the trainings I've held, in human rights trainings I've held with police officers, security agencies, this argument keeps coming up again and again. People say, oh, Nigerians are so terrible. Oh, they are so bad. Oh, this is why we are always annoyed. This is why we are always angry. Yes, but the crime for somebody being dishonest should not be death. The crime for somebody being dishonest should not be imprisonment, forced imprisonment. That's not what it should be.
Truly.
The crime for somebody being dishonest should not be torture. So that's the thing. We continue to find excuses to make up for the lack of accountability in the system.
All right. One of the many reasons why Nigerians, of course, prefer to pay these officers rather than pursuing anything beyond the idea that they know is stressful is some Nigerians do not know how to pursue justice. I had someone call in the previous hour stating that his brother had been detained for a month and he's begging, asking, pleading that they release the brother. So for someone like that and many other people who may be in this position, what is the option available to them?
Well, now, normally, we have legal aid, right? There's a legal aid council, which is set up by an act of the National Assembly, and that provides legal aid to people that are disenfranchised or underserved, that need access to justice. The problem in a lot of situations is that the legal aid is completely underfunded, the lawyers are overstretched, they are overburdened, and they are juggling cases from left, right, and center. And in a lot of situations, they use their own money for logistics for these things. And so it's still all about that dishonesty, that unfairness, where you set up a council or you meet or you set up a committee, right, that should actually provide access to justice to underserved people, and then you deprive them of the funding that is needed. And so in this kind of situations, you have people like Lucky's family and the families of so many other people that have been in police jams. You find that they have to pay huge amount of money to lawyers to help them, because mental things you do is when you have this kind of cases, the fact that you are a human being without any form of legal practice puts you in a disadvantaged position to negotiate with the police. And those are the kind of people they like, so that they can extort, they can take advantage of you in so many instances, right? But your lawyer should be in a position to have a better settlement, to have a negotiation, to put pressure on the police by writing a petition to the IG or filing a case for fundamental human rights enforcement and all of those. But the problem is that legal fees are expensive. Will not do, and that's how they feed their family. And so we come down again to that high cost of that dysfunction in the legal system, where, first of all, it is cumbersome, it is expensive, and it is slow. And so because use it, know that will act as a deterrent for people to actually use those means. And so they come, and then you have situations where people have to pay 500,000, 1 million, 2 million to release their brothers or their relatives that did not commit any crime at all. People they weren't even charged. And that's one of the issues. We need to, I think that apart from having punishment, this make those measures where we punish police officers. And so in the case of 100 or 150 violators of human rights, you punish a particular police officer, or you punish 3 or 4 police officers out of 150 situations. We need to move away from that and then work around issues where there is a system. We need to ensure that there is a system that makes this work. And frankly speaking, the current, and this is me speaking my own personal opinion, the current centralized system of policing that we have will not make this work. I mean, it's unwieldy, it's cumbersome, it is so bureaucratic, right? There is actually nobody. Where somebody stays in Borno State, for instance, and the only person he answers to for his actions is in Abuja. It doesn't make sense. So we need to, if we really want these things to change, we need to start looking at the systemic issue from a systemic point of view and talk about how do we change the system, how do we transform the system for the good of the people, and that is Nigerians.
Yeah, well, you're not alone in that WhatsApp group speaking about decentralizing security. Your opinion stands on the shoulders of lots of Nigerians, experts, analysts who have said that this is one of the ways we can answer the many questions, because that is also, it poses a problem with this case of the boat driver and, of course, the complaint we had earlier from Temple, because these men are believed to be in the IGP monitoring unit. And so it feels like, well, the local police command, it's beyond their hierarchy. But there has to be a responsibility for the state's commissioner. There has to be a responsibility of the commissioner of police in River State, because it's happening in his jurisdiction. So what part does he play in cases like this, where of the IGP team that commit these crimes?
I mean, I agree. It is completely obtuse. I mean, I cannot think of a system that is more designed than that. I mean, why would you have a commissioner of police and disempower the commissioner of police from actually taking responsibility for everything that happens within the territory that he represents? It's completely unheard of. And you have what you call an IGP tactical unit. For what? What do you need an IGP tactical unit for? Why can't they answer to the commissioner of police, and then the commissioner of police answer to the person ahead of him? I mean, I heard an instance where actually they could move, and because they can move from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, I heard that they were threatening to move the guy Rocky to Akwa Ibom, to Uyo. And there are so many instances where people have been moved to Calabar, and people have been moved to different states. And again, it is terrible. It is terrible. It shows that we are not serious. I mean, the NSAS campaign was supposed to be an eye-opener for a serious country, for an institution like the Nigerian police that is serious about changing, about evolving. I mean, the outcry from the NSAS would have sent a message to them, for them to know that Nigerians are fed up. There were instances where police stations were bombed. A police station is supposed to be a symbol of protection, a symbol of service. But you had situations where people burnt down police stations just simply because they do not see it as that institution or as that symbol that serves and protects them. It is seen as a sign of oppression. It is symbolic that people see police officers as oppressors rather than people that should protect them. And so we continue to have these layers and layers of bureaucracy that make it completely impossible to hold people to account. And I'm sure that the IG is not even aware of what these people are doing here in River State.
There are lots of things the IG is not aware of, just by the system not being good enough. But let's talk about police community relations. Now, the Assistant Inspector General of Police in charge of Zone 16, AIG Austin Agbolaho, has urged the public to, without fear, provide credible information to the police to enable them fight crime. AIG Agbolaho made the call during an event organized by honoring members of the Police Officers Mess Port Harcourt. He promised the identities of those who give police information will always be protected. I'm going to play the sound from that.
You can support the police in so many ways, not only financial matters, through information at different levels. But not be at the city's office alone, from the division, from even the outpost. Everywhere I've taught, many people have that belief, which I say today is something of the past, that they don't have confidence, or if they tell the police anything, they will leak their identity. Gentlemen, we have gone beyond that level. At least at this digital level, you don't need to even see you, don't need to know your identity. Just pass your information across. Action will be taken.
So that's the AIG stating that, well, the identities of those who give information will be protected. You know, they're willing to work with the public. I remember earlier this year, the police deployed 366 constabularies in River State. So how is police-community relations affected at this point by these illegal detentions? What is it like at this point? Is it poor or is it good?
There are two pillars of police-community relations, right? One is trust, right? And the other one is community engagement. So you are constant. So trust means you are constantly in the community trusts you, you've built trust within the community. And the other one is that you're constantly engaging, which feeds up the other one. So police-community relations is not something that you cannot just come and say, oh, let there be police-community relations, and then there's police. You cannot wish it. It's not wishful thinking. You need to put in the work, right? And so the fact that I can't even catch his name. The fact that he was talking about the need to protect people, it shows that there's a problem. Because there have been several instances where we have worked in communities, particularly communities ravaged by gangs and cult groups, and we have talked to people, and they said whenever we report the identity of gang members to the police, they get arrested, and then they get released, and then they tell them that we were the ones that reported them, and they come for reprisal attacks. I've seen that happen again and again, not just in River State, but in so many other states in the Niger Delta. So trust is something that you need to work on. You want to build police-community relations, and it's good. It's nice, because the police should have a good relationship with the communities, right? Because you are protecting the communities. And that's even really the essence of community policing. It's not, community policing is not a structure, right, or another layer of policing. It's just a system that is mainstreamed into policing, where communities and security agencies, they realize that they have a stake in security, and that each party has something they bring to the table that can, and then they mutually define the objectives and work together to address security challenges in their communities. That's essentially what community policing is.
Mr. Wodu,
you cannot do. Hello?
Yeah. I was going to tell you that we're almost out of time. So finally, what must we do? Again, I hate that this is the last question every time I have this kinds of conversation, but it must happen. What must we do to correct this problem?
One of the things I start with, really, and there are so many things to do, but the lowest hanging fruit that does not need an IG's approval, that does not need the approval of the police hierarchy, is to improve community relations. Is to make sure that you build trust in the communities. Is to get people to understand that, oh, the police is for us. By being there, by seeing them, by letting people see you actually work for them. But then we know that you cannot collect 50 naira roja and get people to trust that you are for them. That does not happen. So these are some of, for me, this is the lowest hanging fruit. And this is where people actually need to start. Stopping extortion on the roads is something that the Commissioner of Police can do. I've set up a monitoring team to actually get people to actually monitor it and enforce it. So that is one of the lowest hanging fruit to do, and build trust. And then we can begin to build from there in that sense.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Wodu, for your time. We appreciate it. Have yourself a beautiful day.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you. Bye.
Well, it's unfortunate that this is where the show ends for today. Thanks also for being a part of it, rather. Now, Temple, do not forget to reach out to the authorities, the civil society, legal practitioners for your case. I'm yet to see your message to respond with George Will's number, but I'm certain a thing or two would follow now that it's in the public space. Connect with us at Nigeria Info PH on all platforms, and with me at Sparkling Oracle, also at the Chinedus on Instagram and YouTube. We're going to keep talking about this police thing. I'm certain to make up conversations on the One Crossfire for this week. The
Morning Crossfire.